She was my real mom, too. 7 words, from a child he had never seen before in his life, kneeling in the mud at his daughter's grave, clutching a letter so worn the paper had gone soft. She looked up at him, and those eyes, God, those eyes were Isabella's eyes. Same shape, same quiet fire. Dario Moretti, the man who had made generals beg and judges kneel, felt his legs stop working. The most feared man in the city stood completely frozen in front of a 7-year-old girl, and for the first time in 40 years, he had absolutely no idea what to do next. Artem. If those 7 words just stopped your heart the way they stopped, subscribe right now and follow this story all the way to the end, and drop a comment below. Tell me what city you're watching from. I want to see exactly how far this story travels. Now let's go. She was my real mom, too. Dario did not move. He had heard a lot of things in his life that had broken something inside him. The night his wife died. The morning a phone call told him Isabella's car had gone off Route 9 and they were still searching for survivors. The silence after that word, survivors, when the officer's voice slowed down just slightly before saying they had found her. But this was different. Because this was a voice he did not recognize, attached to a face he had never seen speaking words that should not have existed, and yet every single one of them landed with the weight of absolute truth. He looked at the child kneeling in the dirt in front of his daughter's grave. Small. 7, maybe? Dark hair coming loose from a braid that had given up on itself. A coat too thin for October. Hands pressed flat against the base of the tombstone, and in those hands a letter. Folded and refolded so many times the paper had gone the color of old skin. "Who are you?" he said. His voice came out the way it always did. Flat, hard. The voice of a man who had spent 4 decades making sure no room he walked into ever felt safe for anyone else. The girl did not flinch. She looked up at him and she said, steady as stone, "You're her father. I know who you are. She showed me your picture." Dario felt the world tilt 2 degrees to the left. "Isabella showed you my picture," he said. "Yes, sir." She wiped her face with the back of her hand, dirt smeared across her cheek. She didn't seem to notice. She kept it in her wallet, the one from the summer. "You were standing on a boat and you looked mad about something." Dario's jaw tightened. He knew that photo. Isabella had taken it without asking on a trip to Lake Como 7 years ago, and every time he'd told her to delete it, she'd laughed and said it was her favorite picture of him because he looked like a man who had just discovered the ocean existed and was personally offended by it. He had not thought about that photo in months. He had not let himself think about anything that precise, anything that real. Because real things had edges and edges cut, and he was not going to bleed in a cemetery on a Tuesday morning like some ordinary man who had not already used up his entire supply of grief. "What is your name?" he said. "Sophia." "How old are you, Sophia?" 7, 7.5. A pause. She always said to include the half. Something moved in his chest. He ignored it. "How do you know my daughter?" Sophia looked at him for a moment like she was deciding how much to say. Then, "She came to us every Tuesday and Thursday for almost 2 years. She read to us after dinner. She helped with homework. She brought food sometimes, but she always said to tell the staff it was donated." The girl's fingers pressed harder against the letter. "She was kind. She was the kindest person who ever came to Hartwell." "Hartwell," Dario repeated. "Hartwell Children's Home, on Decatur Street." Simply, without apology, the way children say things they have long since stopped being ashamed of. Dario stood very still. His daughter had been visiting an orphanage every Tuesday and every Thursday for 2 years, and he had not known. He who had informants in the police commissioner's office, he who received weekly reports on the movements of every significant person in the city, he had not known a single thing about this. "She never told me, he said. He hadn't meant to say it out loud. Sophia looked at him with eyes that were far too old for her face. "She said you had a hard time," the girl said carefully, "with things that were soft. It's for me, she wrote it to me." "I understand that. I'm asking what it says." "It's private." He looked at her. "Sophia, she wrote it for me." The girl met his eyes without blinking. "Not for you, for me, Titi. And until I decide to share it, it stays mine." 40 years of running an organization where every man who spoke to him chose his words with extreme care. 40 years of rooms that went quiet when he walked in. And this child, this 7-year-old in a falling apart braid and a coat 2 sizes too small, was holding the line on him like he was nobody. He felt distantly and against his will something that might have been admiration. "Fine," he said. Sophia blinked. Clearly she had prepared for more of a fight. "Fine, fine, it's yours." He crouched down so he was at her eye level. Up close, she was even smaller than she looked, and even more tired. The kind of tired that doesn't come from one bad night. "How long have you been coming here?" "Every week." "It's for me. She wrote it to me." "I understand that. I'm asking what it says." "It's private." He looked at her. "Sophia." "She wrote it for me." The girl met his eyes without blinking. "Not for you, for me, and until I decide to share it, it stays mine." 40 years of running an organization where every man who spoke to him chose his words with extreme care. 40 years of rooms that went quiet when he walked in. And this child, this 7-year-old in a falling apart braid and a coat 2 sizes too small, was holding the line on him like he was nobody. He felt distantly and against his will something that might have been admiration. "Fine," he said. Sophia blinked. Clearly she had prepared for more of a fight. "Fine, fine. It's yours." He crouched down so he was at her eye level. Up close, she was even smaller than as she looked, and even more tired. The kind of tired that doesn't come from one bad night. "How long have you been coming here?" "Every week." The girl finally looked back at him, and her eyes were steady and serious and frightened all at once. "I thought it was a game when she taught it to me." "It wasn't a game, was it?" Dario stood up. His mind was already moving, peeling back the last 3 months, reassembling them under a completely different light. Isabella had a safety protocol. She had taught a child specific deflection language. She had begun adoption paperwork without telling anyone. She had been going to an orphanage twice a week in a part of the city where she had no visible reason to be. Isabella had known something was coming. His daughter, his careful, brilliant, infuriatingly private daughter, had been afraid of something specific. And she had been afraid long enough to build systems around it. "Were you followed here this morning?" he said. Sophia thought about it. She actually thought about it seriously, carefully, which he noted and filed away as something unusual. Children that age usually said no immediately to make adults feel better. "There was a man in a gray jacket," she said slowly. "He got on the bus 2 stops after me. He got off at the same stop. I thought it was a coincidence." "Was he still behind you when you entered the cemetery?" "I don't know. I walked fast once I was inside." Dario turned and scanned the open ground around them. Long sight lines in every direction. He was standing at a known location when he visited every Tuesday on a schedule that had been consistent for 3 months, which meant that anyone watching him would already know exactly where he would be this morning. He was exposed. The child was exposed, and he had come alone. "Come with me," he said. Sophia didn't move. "I don't know you." "I told you I'm her father." "She also told me," Sophia said, "that some people seem right but feel wrong, and some people look scary but feel right." She looked at him with those 2 old eyes. "You look very scary." Children that age usually said no immediately to make adults feel better. "There was a man in a gray jacket," she said slowly. "He got on the bus 2 stops after me. He got off at the same stop. I thought it was a coincidence." "Was he still behind you when you entered the cemetery?" "I don't know. I walked fast once I was inside." Dario turned and scanned the open ground around them. Long sight lines in every direction. He was standing at a known location when he visited every Tuesday on a schedule that had been consistent for 3 months, which meant that anyone watching him would already know exactly where he would be this morning. He was exposed. The child was exposed, and he had come alone. "Come with me," he said. Sophia didn't move. I don't know you." "I told you I'm her father." "She also told me," Sophia said, "that some people seem right but feel wrong, and some people look scary but feel right." She looked at him with those 2 old eyes. "You look very scary." "Yes, but you don't feel wrong." "No, I'm not a good man, Sophia. I want to be honest with you about that. I'm not going to tell you I am, but I was her father, and she was going to be your mother. That makes you—" He stopped. The words sat at the back of his throat, and he had to push through it. "That makes you mine, and I protect what is mine. Can you trust me long enough for me to do that?" The girl looked at him for 5 full seconds. Then she reached out and took his hand. Her hand was tiny, 3 fingers wrapping around 2 of his. He had these hands that had done things he would not name in the presence of a child. Hands that had built and destroyed and signed and sealed, and she held on to them like it was the most natural arrangement in the world. Like she had already decided somewhere in those quiet, serious eyes that this was the right move and she was committing to it. They walked. Marco straightened immediately when he saw them coming. "Where are we going?" she asked as the car pulled out. "Somewhere safe. Hartwell will notice I'm missing. I'll handle Hartwell. You can't just take me. There are laws. There are people who are responsible for Sophia." He turned to look at her. "I know the laws. I also know the people who enforce them." He let that settle. "I'm going to keep you safe. That is the only thing that matters right now. Can you let me do that?" She studied him the way she had at the grave, thorough, unhurried, the measuring look of someone who has learned the hard way that quick trust is expensive. "Okay," she said, "but I want to read you the letter." "Whenever you're ready." Sophia looked down at the paper in her lap. Her thumbs moved over the creases gently, the way you touch something precious that is also fragile, something you are terrified of wearing out. "She wrote about you," Sophia said softly. "A lot." "Where are we going?" she asked as the car pulled out. "Somewhere safe. Hartwell will notice I'm missing. I'll handle Hartwell. You can't just take me. There are laws. There are people who are responsible for Sophia." He turned to look at her. "I know the laws. I also know the people who enforce them." He let that settle. "I'm going to keep you safe. That is the only thing that matters right now. Can you let me do that?" She studied him the way she had at the grave, thorough, unhurried, the measuring look of someone who has learned the hard way that quick trust is expensive. "Okay," she said, "but I want to read you the letter." "Whenever you're ready." Sophia looked down at the paper in her lap. Her thumbs moved over the creases gently, the way you touch something precious that is also fragile, something you are terrified of wearing out. "She wrote about you," Sophia said softly. "A lot. She said if you ever found out about me, if you ever stood in front of me and I was sure it was you, I should give it to you." A pause as she said you were going to be angry first. "I'm not angry." She said that's what you'd say. He looked at the girl. She did not look back, but the corner of her mouth moved, just barely. The ghost of something that in another life, another world might have been a smile. "She said you had a hard time saying the things that mattered," Sophia continued. "She said that underneath all of it all, the hard parts, all the complicated parts, she knew you loved her. She said she just wished you'd had more time to show it." Her voice dropped. "She said she was going to make sure I never grew up wondering about that, wondering if someone loved me. She said I was going to know it every single day." The car was silent. Outside, the city moved past the windows, gray morning early traffic buildings that had no idea that inside one black car something irreversible was happening. "Was she right?" Sophia asked quietly. "That you loved her to when?" "Yes," Dario said. His voice was barely there. "She was right." "Then why didn't you tell her more?" He had no answer. He had never had an answer to that. He had carried that question for 3 months, like a stone in his pocket, the exact weight of it, the exact shape, and he still had nothing to say that was worth saying out loud. Sophia seemed to understand this. She did not push. She looked back out the window and said in a voice so small it was almost not a voice at all, "Papa." He turned. She still wasn't looking at him, still looking out at the city going past. "That's what I was going to call you. When it was official. When we were really family." A breath. "Can I still even now, is that?" She stopped. Started again. "Is that okay?" Dario Moretti had survived things that would have broken ordinary men down to nothing. He had never cried, not at his wife's funeral, not at his daughter's, not once in 40 years of building an empire on hard ground. He was not going to cry now. He was absolutely not going to cry in the back of a car in front of a 7-year-old child he had known for 20 minutes. "Yes," he said. The word came out wrecked, completely wrecked. "You can call me that." Sophia nodded once, small and certain. She unfolded the letter. "I'll read it to you now," she said. I think she'd want me to. And as the car moved through the city, as Marco pushed the speed to something that suggested urgency without announcing panic, Sophia began to read in her clear, careful 7.5-year-old voice. And with every word, Diario felt the ground shifting underneath him. Because Isabella's letter was not just words to a child she had loved. It was a confession, a warning. And buried in the final paragraph, a name. A name that Diario recognized immediately. A name that turned his blood to ice. Because that name belonged to someone inside his own organization. And if Isabella had known it and written it down, then her death had never been an accident. It had been a message. And the message had been meant for him. The letter was only the first piece. What Sophia had been carrying without knowing it in her memory, in her coat pocket, sewn into the lining of her backpack, would take Diario the rest of the day to fully understand. And when he did, he would realize that his daughter had not just been protecting a child. She had been protecting evidence. Evidence that could destroy the most powerful man Diario had ever trusted. And that man was already moving. Sophia's voice was steady when she began reading. That was the thing that undid him most. Not the words themselves, not yet, but the steadiness of her. The way she held the paper with both hands and read the way a child reads when they have practiced something so many times it has become a kind of prayer. My darling Sophia, if you are reading this out loud, then you found him. And if you found him, then something has already gone wrong. I need you to know that none of what happened is your fault. None of it was ever your fault. You were the best thing I did, the very best thing. Dario stared straight at him. Papa, yes, I'm talking to you now. I know you're in that car, looking like the world just dropped out from under you and pretending you're fine. I need you to listen, really listen. Not the way you listen when you're already planning your response. The way you used to listen when I was small, and I'd climb into your lap and tell you about my day, and you'd go completely quiet. Like nothing else existed. I need that version of you right now. He pressed his back, teeth together, hard. There is a man named Victor Solin. The car moved. Marco drove. Outside, the city continued its ordinary morning. And Diario sat completely motionless because he knew that name. He had known that name for 23 years. Victor Solin was not some external enemy. Victor Solin was not a rival or a threat from outside. Victor Solin was his consigliere, his closest advisor. The man who had sat at his right hand through 3 decades of decisions, who had helped him build everything he had, who had held the organization together in the weeks after Isabella died while Dario could barely function. Victor Solin had wept at Isabella's funeral. Real tears. Dario had seen them. He's been moving money, Sophia read on, her voice smaller now, like she could feel the weight of what she was carrying even without fully understanding it. For a long time. Through shell accounts in Bratislava and one in Cyprus that I traced back to a holding company registered under a name you'd recognize. He's been selling information, Papa, about your operations, about your people, about you. I don't know for how long. I think years. Stop, Dario said. Sophia stopped immediately. She looked at him. He said nothing for a moment. He breathed, in through the nose, out through the mouth. The technique his doctor had given him 3 years ago for blood pressure management, which he had never used for blood pressure management and used exclusively for moments when he wanted to put his fist through a wall. Keep going, he said. Sophia looked back at the letter. I found the first thread by accident. I was doing my own research. I told you I was working on a property acquisition case, which was true, but the property led somewhere it shouldn't have. The shell company that owned the building was connected to another company, and that one connected back to an account that moved money in a pattern I recognized. I recognized it because I helped design that pattern, Papa. When I was 24 and you asked me to help restructure the Eastern accounts, I built that system and someone had copied it. Marco's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror once, then stayed forward. I spent 4 months tracing it before I was sure. I didn't come to you because I needed to be completely sure first. I knew what you would do if I came to you with something incomplete. I knew you'd move too fast, so I waited until I had everything. Names, amounts, dates, the receiving accounts, the contact on the other end. I compiled it all, and then I made a mistake. Sophia paused. Not because the letter paused, because her voice had dropped to almost nothing, and she was working to keep it level. I told someone I trusted that I was close to finished. I didn't say what I had found. I just said I was close. And 3 days later, my car went off Route 9. The silence in the car was absolute. Dario did not move. He did not speak. He sat with the information settling into him layer by layer, the way concrete sets slowly at first, and then all at once becoming something permanent and immovable and impossible to undo. His daughter had not died in an accident. His daughter had been killed because she was about to expose the man sitting at his right hand, the man who had wept at her funeral, the man who had poured him a drink that night and said she was extraordinary. Dario, she was the best of both of you. And Dario had believed every word because grief makes you stupid and love makes you blind. And he had trusted Victor Solin with his life for 23 years. Is there more? He asked. His voice was something he did not recognize. Sophia nodded. She was gripping the letter with white-knuckled hands now. A little more. Read it. The files are safe. I split them. Some are with my lawyer sealed with instructions that release them to the federal authorities. If I die before a certain date, that date has already passed, so that process is already moving. Papa, I'm sorry. I know that's complicated. But the most important piece, the piece that ties everything together, the one that names Victor directly and has the transaction records I gave to Sophia. She doesn't know she has it. I sewed it into the lining of her backpack, the blue one she always carries. She thinks the lump in the bottom corner is a broken zipper pull. It's a flash drive. Sophia's head came up slowly. Her eyes went wide. Her hand moved immediately to the backpack sitting on the seat beside her small, blue worn at the corners. Her fingers found the bottom seam, pressed, found something hard and small inside the fabric. She looked at Dario. He looked back at her. She hid it in your bag, he said, without telling you. She was protecting me, Sophia said slowly. If I didn't know it was there, I couldn't tell anyone. A pause. But that also means, it means the man who had her killed has been looking for it for 3 months, Dario said. And it means the man outside Hartwell yesterday wasn't guessing. He knew exactly who you were and exactly what you were carrying. Sophia set the backpack on her lap and held it with both arms the way you hold something you suddenly understand is dangerous. She did not look panicked. She looked like a child absorbing something terrible with the kind of processing speed that only comes from having already absorbed terrible things before. She should have told me, Sophia said quietly. Yes, Dario said. She should have told a lot of people a lot of things. Are you angry at her? He looked at the backpack in her arms, at the flash drive sewn into the lining, at 3 months of grief suddenly reorganizing itself into something harder and more purposeful and a great deal more dangerous. No, he said, I'm angry at myself for being someone she felt she had to protect everything from. Sophia absorbed this. Then what happens now? Now I make some calls. His phone was already in his hand. He pulled up a contact he had not called in 6 years. A man named Carver, who worked for a federal agency that Dario had spent most of his adult life actively avoiding. They had an arrangement, the kind of arrangement that existed in the uncomfortable space between sworn enemies who occasionally needed each other. Dario had used Carver once years ago to eliminate a rival who had become a federal problem for both of them. Carver had used Dario twice for things Dario did not discuss. They were not friends. They were the specific kind of not friends who knew too much about each other to ever be fully comfortable, which was its own form of mutual loyalty. The phone rang twice. Moretti, Carver's voice was flat and unsurprised, the way men sound when a call they've been expecting for months finally comes. I wondered when you'd reach out. You've been watching this. We've been watching something. A brief pause. The Isabella situation opened a thread. We started pulling it 3 weeks ago. It goes to places that are going to be uncomfortable for you. Victor Solin. A longer pause this time. Where did you get that name? My daughter gave it to me. He looked at Sophia. She left documentation. Physical documentation on a drive. I have it. Carver was quiet for 4 full seconds. Moretti, I need you to listen to me very carefully. If you have what you're describing, you need to get it to me before Solin knows it exists. Because if he finds out and he has resources to find out faster than you think, I know what he'll do. Dario's voice was even, controlled. I need 24 hours. I can give you 12, 20, 14, and, Moretti, Carver's voice dropped. Is the child safe? She's with me. That's either the safest place she can be or the most dangerous one, depending on how fast Solon moves. A beat. Keep her off the grid. Don't use any of your regular safe houses. Assume Solon knows all of them. He's been inside your operation for years. The call ended. Dario sat for a moment with the phone in his hand and the full weight of that last sentence pressing down on him like a physical thing. Assume Solon knows all of them, which meant every location he had ever trusted was potentially compromised. Every channel of communication he had ever used. Every man he had ever deployed. He trusted Marco. 22 years, and he trusted Marco with his life. But even Marco operated within systems that Victor had helped design. Marco, he said, Sir, don't call Russo. A pause. Sir, Category 1 protocol requires. I know what the protocol requires. I wrote the protocol. He kept his voice level. Don't call anyone, not yet. Drive to the Callaway building on 5th, the parking level, and use your personal phone from here, not the work line. Marco's shoulders shifted almost imperceptibly. He was processing the implication that the work lines weren't safe and filing it away with the professionalism of a man who had weathered worse. Understood. Sophia was watching him. You can't trust your own people. Some of them. How do you know which ones? Right now, I don't. He looked at her steadily, which is why we're going somewhere no one in my organization has ever been. Where? My daughter's apartment. Sophia went very still. You have a key. I have everything of hers. He said it quietly. After she died, I had everything moved to storage. Her landlord wanted the unit cleared. I couldn't go through it myself. I kept putting it off. He paused. She had a second phone. Personal. Not connected to anything of mine. If her research is anywhere recoverable, it'll be there. What if someone already found it? They would have needed to know about it first, which means they would have needed to know about the apartment. He looked at Sophia. Did she ever mention a second phone to you? Sophia thought. She had a blue case on one of her phones. She said it was her private one. She said it was for important things. The girl's eyes moved. She called me from it sometimes when she was running late to Hartwell. I have the number memorized. Something moved in Dario's chest. He filed it immediately. Good, that's good. The car turned. Dario watched the mirrors. Nothing visible. But visible wasn't the metric anymore. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. Mr. Moretti? The voice was distorted, processed through something cheap and electronic. I think you've had an interesting morning. Every muscle in Dario's body locked. Beside him, Sophia heard the voice and went completely still, her hands tightening on the backpack. Who is this? Dario said. You know who this is? Or you're starting to figure it out. I want to give you an opportunity, Mr. Moretti, because I have respect for you. I've always had respect for you. This doesn't have to become something ugly. It's already ugly, Dario said. My daughter is dead. A brief silence. That was not my preferred outcome, genuinely. She pushed into something she should have left alone. I gave her 3 separate warnings she chose to ignore. The result was unfortunate. Dario said nothing. He was recording the call on his personal device. He was clocking the background sounds, faint, barely there, but present. An interior space, climate control running. The specific low hum of a high-end building's HVAC system. Victor Solon was in his office. The drive, the distorted voice said. You have it, or the girl does. Either way, I want it delivered. I'll give you until tonight. After tonight, I stop being reasonable. And the girl? The girl is irrelevant to me if I have the drive. Children are not my business, Mr. Moretti. I'm a reasonable man. I just want what belongs to me removed from the world before it causes problems for both of us. Both of us, Dario repeated. You are on that drive too, perhaps not as prominently as myself, but there are transactions that would be difficult to explain. I'm offering you a way out that protects both our interests. Sophia was looking at him, reading his face. She was extraordinarily good at reading faces for someone her age, and what she saw in his must have told her something because she leaned close and whispered barely a sound, Don't. He looked at her. Don't give it to him, she whispered. Isabella didn't die so you could give it back to him. 7 years old, 7.5, and she was sitting there holding the most dangerous piece of evidence in the city in her arms, telling him what was right, telling him what his own daughter had already decided with her life. He put the phone back to his ear. "I'll think about it," he said. "Don't think too long." The distortion crackled. "And Mr. Moretti, I know about the federal call you just made. I told you, I've been inside your world for a long time. You have 14 hours before Carver moves. After that, neither of us controls what happens." A pause. "Give me the drive. Protect yourself. Protect the child. This is the practical choice." The call ended. Dario lowered the phone. "He's listening to your calls," Sophia said. "Yes. So he knows where we're going. He knows where I said we were going, not where we're actually going." He was already typing a message to Marco on a piece of paper, old habit analog, something Victor's technology couldn't intercept. He passed it to the front seat. Marco read it without reacting and took the next left instead of continuing his straight. "Where are we actually going?" Sophia asked. "Somewhere I've never taken anyone." He paused. "When Isabella was 17, she found a place, an old building near the waterfront that she used to go to when she wanted to disappear from the world. She made me promise never to tell anyone about it. She made me swear on her mother's name." He looked out the window. "I kept that promise for 14 years. Nobody in my organization knows it exists." Sophia absorbed this. Then quietly, "She had a lot of secrets." "She did. Maybe she learned it from you." The words were not unkind. They were just true, and they landed accordingly. "Yes," he said. "She probably did." They rode in silence for a moment. Then Sophia shifted, reached into the front pocket of her backpack, and produced a small photograph worn folded once the color slightly faded. She held it out to him. It was Isabella, maybe 25 years old, sitting on a low wall somewhere, laughing at something off camera. Her hair was loose. She looked young and unguarded in a way that Dario had not seen often enough when she was alive, the version of his daughter that existed when she thought no one important was watching. "She gave me this one," Sophia said. "She said I could keep it. She said it was taken on the best day she had that whole year." A beat. "Do you know what day it was?" He took the photograph and looked at it, studied the background, the light, the particular quality of the laugh on her face. His chest was tight in a way that had nothing to do with the threat and everything to do with the simple, unbearable fact of her. "No," he said, "I don't." "That's the saddest part," Sophia said softly. "Not the scary stuff, just that." He held the photograph for another moment. Then he placed it carefully in the inside pocket of his jacket, directly over his chest, and left it there. The car moved. The city moved around it. Somewhere across town, a man in an expensive office was making calculations about timelines and leverage, and what a drive full of evidence was worth versus what it cost to make it disappear. He was a patient man, Victor Solon, careful, methodical. He had operated inside Diario's world for 23 years without a single visible mistake. But he had made one mistake. One. He had sent a man to a children's home to approach a little girl instead of simply watching her. He had gotten close too early. He had made Sophia careful instead of making her disappear, and in doing so he had driven her to the cemetery on a Tuesday morning, and he had put her into Ario's path. That was the mistake. It was small, it was human, and it was going to cost him everything. Dario looked at the backpack in Sophia's arms and thought about a flash drive the size of his thumbnail that contained 3 months of his daughter's work, her fear, her careful, brilliant mind running at full speed in the dark with no one to help her. She had been alone with this. She had carried it alone for months. And she had found a way, imperfect, dangerous, full of gaps. But she had found a way to make sure it survived her. He was not going to let it have been for nothing. "When we get there," he said, "I'm going to need you to stay close to me and do exactly what I say when I say it. No questions until I say questions are okay. Can you do that?" Sophia looked at him. "Can I ask one question now?" "One. Are we going to win?" He thought about Victor Solon in his office. He thought about Carver in 14 hours. He thought about a flash drive and a photograph and a letter worn soft from being read too many times. He thought about his daughter at 31 years old, sitting alone somewhere with the laptop and a fear she would not share, doing the most courageous thing she had ever done, while her father was in Brussels not answering his phone. Yes, he said, we're going to win. Sophia nodded once decisively the way she did when something matched the conclusion she had already reached on her own. She pulled the backpack tighter. She looked straight ahead. And somewhere in the lining of that small blue bag, Isabella's last act of love sat waiting patient, precise, and completely intact. The building near the waterfront looked like nothing. That was the point. Isabella had chosen it at 17 for exactly that reason, because nothing that looked like nothing ever got a second glance. And she had understood even then, growing up in her father's world, that the most valuable real estate was the kind nobody wanted. Marco dropped them 2 blocks away and drove on without stopping. Dario moved without hurrying Sophia beside him, her hand back in his without either of them deciding it. The backpack was on her shoulders. He had not asked her to give it to him, and she had not offered. It was hers. Isabella had put it there for her. That mattered. The door to the building opened with a key Dario had carried on the same ring as his house keys for 14 years without ever using it. The lock turned clean. He pushed the door open, let Sophia in first, and pulled it closed behind them. She really came here, Sophia asked. Her voice was hushed, not from fear, but from something closer to reverence. She said it was the only place in the city where she could think without the city thinking back at her. He moved through the dark interior toward a back room he knew from memory. She brought a lamp, books. She said she spent an entire weekend here once reading and didn't speak to another human being, and it was the best 48 hours of her life. That sounds lonely. Said the same thing. She said I was proving her point. Sophia almost smiled. Not quite, but almost. The back room had 2 chairs, a folding table, and a lamp that still worked when Dario clicked it on. Isabella had replaced the bulb at some point recently enough that the light came up clean and steady. On the table under a piece of cloth was a flat lockbox. Dario pulled a second key from his ring. The box opened. Inside a phone in a blue case, a folded sheet of paper, and a photograph face down that he did not turn over yet. Sophia saw the phone and her breath caught. That's her private one. Yes. He picked it up. The battery was dead. Isabella had not planned for how long it would sit here, or she had, and simply hadn't had time to come back. He produced a charging cable from his jacket pocket, the same make something he had bought 3 weeks after her death in a fit of irrational thinking that he still could not explain, as though having the right cable meant something, and plugged it into a portable battery pack. They waited. The phone screen stayed black. Sophia sat in one of the chairs and put the backpack on her lap and looked at the wall. Dario stood. He was not a man who sat when the situation was unresolved. Can I ask something? Sophia said. Yes. The man on the phone, Victor. She said the name carefully, like she was feeling out whether it would bite her. He was your friend. For a long time. What does it feel like finding out someone like that? She paused. Someone you trusted that much. He thought about the honest answer, which he did not usually give to anyone, and then thought about who was asking. Like finding a crack in the foundation of a building you have lived in your whole life, he said. Everything you built on top of it, every decision, every conversation, every time you thought you were being smart, suddenly you don't know which parts are solid and which parts were already over a hole. Sophia thought about this seriously. Isabella knew that would happen to you when you found out. Yes. Is that why she waited so long to... She stopped, started differently. She was protecting you too, not just me. She didn't want you to fall through the floor until she had something solid to hand you first. The accuracy of it knocked him sideways. He had been building toward that conclusion for the last hour, circling it, and this child had just walked straight to the center of it in one sentence. Yes, he said, I think that's exactly right. The phone screen flickered. A charging indicator appeared 5% climbing. He crossed to it immediately and pressed the power button. The phone shuddered, thought about it, and came on. There was a lock code. He looked at Sophia. She looked back at him. She told me once, the girl said slowly. She said if anything ever happened to her and I needed to get into something that asked for a number, I should use the number that was on the back of the picture she gave me. Sophia unzipped the front pocket of her backpack and produced the photograph Isabella laughing on the wall. She turned it over. Written in Isabella's handwriting, very small in pencil, a 6-digit number. Dario entered it. The phone unlocked. What he found inside was organized the way Isabella organized everything, with meticulous, almost aggressive clarity. Folders labeled by date, subfolders by subject. A separate folder simply titled Daddy that contained one file, a voice memo recorded 4 weeks before she died. He looked at it for a long moment. "Play it," Sophia said quietly. "You need to hear it." He pressed play. Isabella's voice filled the small room, clear, close, like she was standing right there with them in the lamplit quiet. "Okay, Papa, if you're hearing this, then I didn't get the chance to tell you in person, which means things went badly, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry for a lot of things. I'm sorry I didn't come to you earlier. I know why I didn't, you know why I didn't, but I still wish I had. I want you to know that I was not scared when I made this recording. I was clear. I was thinking straight, and I knew what I was doing, and I need you to believe that, because I need you to finish this, and you can't finish it if you're inside the grief. Are you inside the grief?" A pause on the recording, deliberate, like she had expected him to answer. "You are, okay. I know you are. I know you've been in it since the second someone called you. But Papa, listen to me. There's a little girl. Her name is Sophia. She is the best person I have ever met in my life, and I mean that the way I never exaggerate, and you know I never exaggerate. She is brave, and she is careful, and she is so much smarter than anyone gives her credit for. And she needs you, not the version of you that runs things. The other one, the one I grew up with before everything got so heavy, the one who used to sit with me in the kitchen at midnight and let me talk about nothing for an hour because I couldn't sleep. That version, she needs that one." Sophia had gone very still. Her hands were pressed flat on top of the backpack, and she was staring at the phone with an expression that was trying very hard to be composed and was not quite succeeding. "Victor Solon has been running a parallel operation out of your organization for at least 7 years. I have the full documentation on the drive. You'll find it, or Sophia will find it, because I trust both of you to be smarter than him when you're working together. The federal contact you need is Carver. I know you know Carver. Use him. The evidence is clean and complete, and it will hold. What Victor has built will come apart the moment that drive reaches the right hands." Another pause. "I need to tell you something else. Something that isn't about Victor. Papa, I was happy. I want you to know that. The last 2 years of my life visiting Hartwell, watching Sophia grow up, making plans for what came next, I was genuinely, completely happy. Happier than I'd been in a long time. And I want you to know that some of that happiness came from knowing that somewhere in this impossible person you've always been, there was someone who loved me completely. Even when you were terrible at showing it. Even when you were in Brussels. I always knew it. I want you to have known that I knew." The recording went quiet for a moment, just her breathing. Then, "Take care of her, Papa. She doesn't know it yet, but she's exactly like you. She's going to argue with you constantly, and she's always going to be right, and it's going to make you crazy. Good, you need that. You've needed that for years." A sound that might have been a quiet laugh. "I love you. That's all. I love you." The recording ended. The room was completely silent. Sophia was crying. Not loudly, she cried the way she did everything, with a kind of determined quietness, like she was trying to do it efficiently and with minimum disruption to others. Tears running straight down, jaw set, eyes steady. Dario stood with the phone in his hand and said nothing for a long time. He could feel everything Isabella had described: the grief, the floor, the crack in the foundation, and underneath it something else. Something she had put there deliberately. A handhold. A reason to stand up and keep moving. He had never deserved her. He had always known that. "She was right," Sophia said without wiping her face. "You do look like you need someone to argue with you." The sound that came out of Dario then surprised him entirely. Not quite a laugh. He was not at a place where laughing was available to him, but something in the same direction. Something human and involuntary and completely outside his control. "She was usually right," he said. "Always," Sophia corrected. "She was always right. She just said usually to be polite." He looked at the girl. Red-eyed, tear-streaked, holding a backpack full of evidence that could bring him on a 23-year conspiracy in a building that didn't exist on any map, arguing semantics with a man whose name made entire rooms go quiet. He thought Isabella knew exactly what she was doing. His phone buzzed. Not the work phone, his personal one, the number only 3 people in the world had. The screen showed a name that was not saved as a contact, but that he recognized as belonging to a man named Desmond Reed, who was Victor Solin's personal driver, and who had been feeding Dario information about Victor's private movements for the last 14 months. Dario had recruited Desmond quietly without Victor's knowledge for reasons that had seemed purely precautionary at the time. Organizational hygiene, he had told himself. You always kept a thread on the people closest to you, even the ones you trusted, especially the ones you trusted. He answered, "Talk." Desmond's voice was low and rapid. "He's moving. Left the office 20 minutes ago, which he never does mid-morning ever. He's got 2 additional cars with him that's not his normal security configuration. He's running something. I heard him on the phone before he left. He said the words containment window and before Carver activates. Then he looked right at me, and I knew I had about 30 seconds before he made a decision about whether I was still useful to him. Where are you now?" "My car. Personal vehicle. I left my work phone on my desk. If he's been monitoring those, he'll see me as stationary." A pause. "Mr. Moretti, he said one more thing before he left. He said the name Hartwell. He said to send 2 people there to secure the asset." Sophia. He was sending people to Hartwell for Sophia, except Sophia was not at Hartwell. He doesn't know where she is. Dario said more to himself than to Desmond. No, but he knows she exists and he knows she matters, and he's not waiting anymore. Desmond's voice tightened. "He also said your name. He said you'd made the sentimental choice and that would slow you down. He said sentimental men always lose the clock." Dario looked at Sophia, who was watching him read the situation off his own face with those precise, careful eyes of hers. "He's wrong," Dario said flatly. "Where is he going?" "I think the port. He has a boat registered under one of the Cyprus holding companies. If he gets on that boat with anything less than what he needs from you, he's gone. Different jurisdiction, different everything." Dario made the calculation in under 3 seconds. Victor was running, which meant Victor had decided the drive was either unrecoverable or too risky to pursue directly, and he was cutting losses. The port was 40 minutes from their current location. Carver's 14-hour window was now a constraint on Victor, not just on Dario. "Desmond, can you get to the port?" "Already heading there." "Don't approach him. Don't let him see you. I need a position and a boat registration number." He was already pulling up Carver's number with his other hand. "And Desmond, you did the right thing." A short silence. "I liked Isabella," Desmond said simply. "She was kind to my daughter when she came to Hartwell. My daughter was there for 2 years before I got custody. Isabella used to read to her." His voice was steady, but something moved underneath it. "I've been waiting for a reason. Just needed someone to point me at it." The call ended. Dario dialed Carver. "I need to move up the timeline," he said the moment the call connected. "Solon is heading for the port. He has a boat. He's running." Carver swore a short, precise profanity that conveyed a great deal of information very efficiently. "If he makes international water, we lose him. Moretti, I need that drive. You'll have it within 2 hours. I need it in 1. Then you need to have someone at the port in 40 minutes. Another short silence. "I can do that. But Moretti, I need you to understand something. When this opens up, it opens up wide. There will be things on that drive that implicate your operation. Not just Solon, you." "I know. And you're giving it to me anyway." "My daughter died getting it to me," Dario said. "I'm not going to protect myself at the cost of that meaning nothing." Carver was quiet for a moment. "Then there may be room for a conversation about the scope of what gets pursued. I'm not making promises. I'm not asking for promises." He looked at Sophia again. "I'm asking for enough room to finish what my daughter started. Get me that drive." The call ended for the second time. Sophia had been following all of this with the focused attention of a child who understands that they are inside a situation that is moving fast and that paying close attention is the only reasonable response. She did not ask panicked questions. She did not make it harder. She simply tracked everything with those serious brown eyes and waited for him to tell her what came next. "He's running," she said. Not a question. "Yes." "So we have to move." "Yes." She stood up immediately, backpack on, and looked at him. "The drive." Do you want to take it out now to keep it separate from me? He thought about it. No, you keep it. If something happens and we get separated, you run. You don't stop. You don't wait for me. You get to the highest traffic public location you can find and you call this number. He wrote Carver's number on the inside of her wrist in pen, pressing firmly enough that the ink would last. You tell him your name. You tell him you have what Isabella left. He'll come. Sophia looked at the number on her wrist, then at him. What if something happens to you? Then you do exactly what I just told you. I meant, she stopped. Her jaw worked for a moment. I just found you. I don't want something to happen to you. The simplicity of it, the absolute uncomplicated directness of a child saying what she meant without architecture around it. It went through him like light through water. Nothing is going to happen to me, he said. I'm very difficult to get rid of. Ask anyone. That's not a real answer. No, it isn't. He crouched down to her level the way he had at the grave. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure I am standing right next to you when this is over. That is not a promise I make lightly. I don't make promises lightly. She looked at him for a long moment. Those eyes, Isabella's eyes, a version of his own eyes filtered through 2 generations, softened into something he had never managed to be but was looking at now. Okay, she said, then let's go. He stood. He took one last look at the room, the lamp, the lockbox, the folding table where Isabella had come to think without the city thinking back. He picked up the phone in the blue case and put it in his jacket pocket next to the photograph. She left one more thing in the box, Sophia said from behind him. You didn't open the paper. He had not. He went back, unfolded it. It was not evidence. It was not documentation. It was a single line in Isabella's handwriting. The same pen, the same neat compressed script she had used since she was 12 years old when he had taught her that legible handwriting was a professional skill, and she had rolled her eyes and then practiced it obsessively for a month until it was perfect. The line read, "The lawyer's name is Elena Vasquez. She has the rest. She's been waiting for your call. She knows everything. Trust her." Elena Vasquez. Dario knew the name, a family law attorney, mid-40s reputation for being extremely difficult to move off a position once she had taken one. Isabella had mentioned her exactly once in passing months ago, something about helping with a case for a client. He had not retained it as significant. Isabella had been 2 steps ahead of everyone the entire time. He folded the paper and put it with the phone. One more call to make, he told Sophia. While we walk, she said. While we walk. They moved back through the building. Dario dialed Elena Vasquez, who answered on the first ring in the flat, unsurprised tone of someone who had been waiting for this exact call for 3 months. Mr. Moretti, she said. I was beginning to wonder. My daughter was thorough, he said. I'm sorry it took me this long. She told me you'd say that too. A brief pause. I have everything she gave me. The sealed package was opened this morning by a federal courier. She set up an automatic release that I was not able to stop, even if I'd wanted to. The material is already in transit to the appropriate parties. Carver, among others. Her voice was careful. Mr. Moretti, the material implicates a number of people. Some of them are yours. I want you to be prepared for that. I know. She protected you where she could. The documentation she gave me was structured very deliberately. She was specific about what she included and what she left out. Elena paused. She loved you. In case that wasn't clear from the rest of it, the whole architecture of what she built was designed around keeping you standing at the end. He was moving through the dark of the building, and his daughter was everywhere, in the lawyer's voice in the phone against his chest, in the little girl walking beside him with a flash drive sewn into the lining of her backpack. She was everywhere, and she was gone. And those 2 facts existed simultaneously inside him like 2 tones played at once, dissonant and permanent. Thank you, he said, for keeping your word to her. She made it easy, Elena said. She was the clearest client I have ever had. She knew exactly what she wanted and exactly why. She said, a small pause. She said she was doing it for her father, that she needed him to have something left to fight for, and she was going to make sure he had it. Dario pushed the door open and they stepped back out into the morning. The city was fully awake now. Traffic voices, a specific dense hum of a city that had no idea what was moving through it. Sophia looked up at him. Ready. He looked down at her, 7 years old, 7.5, holding on with both hands to the last thing his daughter had built. Ready, he said, and they walked forward into the city together, the most feared man anyone had ever heard of, and a small girl in a coat that was too thin, carrying the weight of everything between them, toward a reckoning that had been 3 months in arriving and was no longer willing to wait. Marco was already waiting 2 blocks from the waterfront when Dario and Sofia came around the corner. He had the engine running and his face arranged in the particular neutral expression that meant he had information and was holding it until asked. Dario got in. Sofia got in. The car moved before the door was fully closed. Desmond called the secondary line, Marco said immediately. Victor's at the port, Pier 17. The boat is registered under the name Callaway Marine Holdings. Same shell name as the building on 5th, which means Isabella tracked that too. He paused. There are 4 men with him. 2 I recognize as his personal security. The other 2 I don't know, which means they're not from our organization. Outside contractors, Dario said. That's what it looks like. How long before he can move the boat? Desmond says 30 minutes, maybe less. The crew was already on board when Victor arrived. Marco glanced in the mirror. Carver's people are 12 minutes out. They're coming in quiet, no marked vehicles, no lights. They don't want Victor to run before they have a position. 12 minutes. Victor had a 30-minute window. The math was functional but not comfortable. There's something else, Marco said. His voice changed slightly, a tightening that Dario had learned to read over 22 years as the sound of news that had not yet been fully processed. 2 of my men calls in from Hartwell. Victor's people arrived there 20 minutes ago. They told the staff they were social services follow-up visit for a child named Sophia Reeves. Sophia's head came up sharply. That's my name. My file name at Hartwell. They went through your room, Marco said, and there was something careful in how he said it. They took things, clothing, some books. They were looking for something specific. The staff said they checked every seam and pocket of everything in the room. The backpack, Sophia said. They were looking for a backpack like this one. Her arms tightened around it instinctively. They didn't find what they were looking for, Marco said, because you had it with you. But they know it exists and they know Victor doesn't have it. He met Dario's eyes in the mirror. He knows you have it, or she does. Dario looked at Sofia. She was already thinking he could see it in the stillness of her face, the way her eyes moved slightly left when she was working through something. Isabella had done that exact same thing. He had told her once when she was 12 that he could always tell when she was calculating because she looked left and she had spent the next 3 years training herself to look right instead, which had worked until she forgot to do it, which was always when it mattered most. He's not running, Dario said slowly. The realization arrived fully formed. He's drawing us to the port. If he were running, he would have moved the boat last night. He waited until this morning, until he knew I had Sofia, until he knew I had the drive, and then he went to the port where he has 4 men and a contained space and a boat he can control. He leaned forward. It's not an exit, it's a trap. Marco said nothing, which was confirmation. He wants the drive and he wants to make sure there's no one left who knows what's on it, Dario said, in that order. From the back seat, Sofia's voice came out very level. He wants to kill us. He wants to resolve the problem, Dario said, which is the same thing. Okay. She said it with a steadiness that should not have been possible from a 7-year-old, and that he was beginning to understand was simply the particular quality of her, the thing Isabella had seen and loved and built a future around. So what do? We change the geometry, Dario said. He set a trap that works if we come to him. So we don't go to him. He picked up his phone and called Carver directly. The call connected in one ring. Tell me you're close, Dario said. 8 minutes. We have eyes on the pier. Moretti, your man, Desmond, has been very helpful. Victor has not moved. He's waiting for something. A pause. He's waiting for you. I know, I'm not coming. A brief silence. Explain. I'm sending you the drive, not me, not in person. I'm sending you the drive through a channel Victor doesn't know about, and I need you to move on Victor the moment you have it in hand. Don't wait for me. Don't wait for confirmation. The second that drive is in your possession, you move. How are you getting it to me? Dario looked at Marco. Desmond is at the port. Marco understood immediately and reached for his personal phone. My driver's man is already on site, Dario told Carver. He'll bring it to your lead agent at the pier entrance. Gray sedan, he'll have his window down. 3 minutes. Moretti, if you wait for me, Victor waits too. And Victor is not a patient man when he knows the clock is running. Move the moment you have it. He ended the call and turned to Sophia. She already had the backpack off her shoulders and was working at the bottom seam with careful fingers, feeling for the flash drive. She found it pressed her thumbnail along the inner corner until a small section of lining separated and worked the drive out with 2 fingers. It was tiny, the size of a thumbnail. Black plastic, unremarkable, containing 3 months of his dead daughter's most important work. She held it out to him on her open palm. He looked at it for a moment, then at her. She trusted you with it, he said. Now I'm trusting you with it, Sophia said simply. He took it, passed it to Marco with 3 words, Desmond, right now. Marco pulled over without stopping the car fully, a rolling pause, and a figure appeared at the window, hand extended. Desmond Reed, Victor Solin's driver of 11 years, took the drive without a word and disappeared back into the crowd. The car kept moving. Now what? Sophia asked. Now we wait 4 minutes and Victor Solin's morning gets extremely complicated. Sophia pulled her backpack back onto her lap and looked out the window. He's going to know it was you, she said. Even after. He's going to know you did this. Yes. Does that scare you? He thought about the honest answer. Victor Solin in custody does not scare me. Victor Solin with nothing to lose and 4 armed men in a boat is a different conversation. He looked at his watch, which is why we are here and not there. His phone rang, unknown number. Not the same distorted line as before, a clean call, no processing, which was somehow worse. He answered, You didn't come. Victor's voice without the distortion was something Dario had not heard in 3 months. Familiar in the way that pain in an old injury is familiar, you recognize it immediately, even when you've almost forgotten it. Smooth, considered. The voice of a man who had made a career of sounding like the most reasonable person in the room. No, Dario said. That was smart. A pause that had calculation in it. The drive is on its way to people who will know exactly what to do with it. A silence. Longer this time. The kind of silence that a certain type of person uses to reassemble themselves when something has not gone as planned. Dario had used that silence himself on certain occasions. He recognized it from the inside. 23 years, Victor said finally. 23 years, Dario agreed. I want you to understand something. What I built, what I was doing, it was not personal. It was never personal. You were not the target. You were the infrastructure. There is a difference. My daughter was personal, Dario said. His voice did not change. It stayed flat and even and entirely controlled, which was the most dangerous thing it could possibly be, and Victor was experienced enough to know that. She was personal. She had a name. She had a 7-year-old girl she was going to raise. She had a voice memo on a phone that she recorded 4 weeks before you had her killed. And in it, she says she was happy. She says she was the happiest she had been in years. He stopped. You took that. For infrastructure. Victor said nothing. I want you to know, Dario continued very quietly, that the only reason you are going to federal custody this morning instead of into the water is because my daughter specifically structured her evidence to make sure I couldn't do it the other way. She knew me well enough to take that option out of my hands. A pause. She was smarter than both of us. She always was. Another silence. Then Victor's voice doing something it almost never did, going slightly unsteady. I am sorry. For what it's worth, Dario, I am genuinely sorry about Isabella. It's worth nothing, Dario said. But I heard you. He ended the call. Sophia was watching him. She had heard everything. The car was not large, and he had not lowered his voice. She looked at him with an expression that contained grief and relief and something else, something older that he was going to spend a long time learning to read. Is it over? She asked. Before he could answer, Carver's name appeared on his screen. He answered. We have him. Carver's voice was tight with the specific controlled energy of an operation landing cleanly. Victor Solin is in custody as of 90 seconds ago. The drive is in our possession. His 4 men surrendered without engagement apparently, when you tell a group of hired contractors that their principal has just been taken by federal agents and they are now the only remaining loose end, they make pragmatic decisions. A brief pause. It's done, Moretti. The drive goes where Isabella intended, Dario said. All of it. Understood. We'll be in touch about the scope conversation. Another pause, and then Carver said something that was clearly not his usual register. Something slightly awkward with the honesty of it. Your daughter did extraordinary work. I mean that. The documentation she compiled would have taken a full federal team 18 months. She did it alone in 3. His voice settled. She was a remarkable person. Yes, Dario said. She was. He lowered the phone. The car was quiet. Outside, the city moved in its ordinary way, completely unaware that something had just broken open inside it, a 23-year rot cut out at the root on a Tuesday morning because a 31-year-old woman had been thorough enough and brave enough and loved enough to make sure it could not survive her. Sophia let out a long breath. It was the first time he had seen her lose the composure just for a moment, just a small, controlled collapse of breath that acknowledged everything she had been holding. Then she straightened her shoulders and looked at him. What happens to me now? She asked. Direct. No drama around it. Just the practical question of a child who had learned early that the practical questions were the ones worth asking. That depends on what you want, he said. She looked at him steadily. I want what Isabella promised. Tell me what she promised. A family, a real one, a home that was mine. Someone who would be there in the morning and at dinner and when I couldn't sleep. She said it without apology, without softening it to make it easier to hear. She said I deserved all of that. She said everyone does, but especially me, because I had waited long enough. He thought about Elena Vasquez, about adoption paperwork Isabella had already started, about a 7-year-old who took buses alone and memorized phone numbers and held the line with Mafia bosses and cried quietly so as not to cause trouble. He thought about a voice memo and the words, "She's exactly like you." I have a lawyer named Elena Vasquez, he said. She has paperwork that Isabella started. The legal process will take time. There are hearings and reviews and steps that cannot be skipped. I will not pretend it's simple. He looked at her. But I will be at every hearing. I will do every step. And while we are doing every step, you will live in my house, in a room that is yours with your name on the door if you want it there, and I will be there in the morning and at dinner and when you cannot sleep. Sophia absorbed this. You have a big house. Embarrassingly large. Isabella said you had too many rooms and not enough people. She was right. She was always right. Something shifted in Sophia's face. Not a smile, exactly too much weight in the moment for a full smile, but the direction of one, the intention of one. She said you'd be terrible at bedtime stories. I will be absolutely terrible at bedtime stories. She said you'd try anyway. I will try anyway. Sophia nodded slowly, processing, settling something internally with the thoroughness she brought to everything. Then she reached over and put her hand over his, not holding it, the way she had at the cemetery, fingers wrapped, a child holding on. This was different. This was a hand placed flat over a hand, deliberate, a choice. Okay, she said, let's go home. He looked at her hand on his, small and certain, and already entirely his in every way that mattered. He turned his hand over so hers was in his palm, closed his fingers gently and held on. Marco, he said, Sir, take us home. The car moved. Dario held Sophia's hand and watched the city pass and thought about the room Isabella had kept at his house until she was 26, the one with the window that faced east, because she had always liked the morning light. He thought about it empty for the last 3 months. He thought about it occupied again. Different. Entirely different. A different child with different eyes in the same particular stubborn refusal be moved off a position once she had taken one. He thought about how Isabella had planned this. All of it. Not just the evidence, not just the legal architecture, not just the voice memo and the lawyer and the flash drive sewn into a backpack. She had planned for him. She had looked at her father, a man she had called complicated and hard and terrible at showing the things that mattered, and she had decided with full information that he was still the right person, that he was still worth building toward. That was the thing. That was the thing he was going to have to carry forward and figure out how to be worthy of. Not just for Sophia, for Isabella. because she had spent the last year of her life making a bet on him, and she had paid everything to back it. He was not going to let it have been a bad bet. His phone buzzed. A message from Elena Vasquez. I have the emergency custody filing ready. Judge Harmon owes me a conversation. We can have a temporary order by end of day. Call me when you are ready to start. He read it twice. Then he typed back, ready now. Who is that? Sophia asked. She was leaning against his arm slightly, the way children lean, without fully deciding to the body. Making contact the mind hasn't quite approved yet. The lawyer, Isabella's lawyer. He put the phone away. She says we can start the paperwork today. Sophia was quiet for a moment. It's going to take a while. You said so. Yes. But it's going to happen. Yes. Another quiet moment. Then, I never had a grandfather before. I've never been one before. I think you'll be bad at it at first. Almost certainly. But you'll try anyway. He looked down at her. She was looking ahead, still slightly leaning, her hand still in his, the empty backpack on her other side. She looked exhausted and 7 years old and simultaneously like the most settled person in the car. Yes, he said, I will try anyway. She nodded once satisfied and closed her eyes. Not asleep, he could tell by her breathing she was not asleep. Just resting. Just allowing herself, for the first time in what was probably a very long time, to be in a moving car with someone responsible for what happened next, and to let that be enough. He stayed still so she could lean. Outside, the city continued. Somewhere across town, Victor Solon was in the back of a federal vehicle, and 23 years of careful damage were being unwound by people with the authority to do it. Somewhere in a sealed document package, Isabella's work was arriving at the hands she had always intended it for. And somewhere in a family court filing system, a case number was being assigned to a little girl who had been waiting for a long time to be someone's. Dario looked out the window and let himself very quietly feel something he had not felt in 3 months. Not peace exactly. Not yet. There was too much still to be done, too much wreckage still to be accounted for. But underneath the grief and the anger and the long cold weight of everything that had been lost, something that felt like ground. Solid ground, the kind you could build on. Isabella had left him that. She had built it herself, piece by careful piece, and she had left it for him like a foundation. He looked down at the small head leaning against his arm, and he understood fully for the first time what she had been trying to give him. Not just justice, not just evidence, not just the end of Victor Solon. A reason to stay. Sophia fell asleep in the car. Not the way children fall asleep when they are comfortable and safe and have nothing to worry about. The way they fall asleep when they have been running on adrenaline and grief and sheer determination for so long that the body simply stops negotiating and takes what it needs. She was leaning against Dario's arm one moment and completely gone the next, her breathing dropping into something slow and even, her grip on his hand loosening, but not releasing. He did not move. Marco drove. Dario sat still with a sleeping child's hand in his and looked at nothing in particular and let himself exist inside the moment without trying to manage it. He was not good at that. He had never been good at that. Isabella had told him once that he treated stillness like an enemy, like something that would kill him if he let it get close. She had said it the way she said most true things about him, lightly, almost in passing, as though she knew the only way he would actually hear it was if she didn't make too much of it. He heard it now. They reached the house 40 minutes later. It was the main house, the one he had lived in for 26 years, the one Isabella had grown up in, the one that had been too large and too quiet for 3 months. When Marco stopped the car, Dario sat for a moment without moving, looking at the front door. The last time he had brought someone home to this house who mattered, it had been Isabella. Coming back from the hospital after a minor surgery, she had refused to let him fuss over complaining the entire drive that he was driving too carefully, and it was condescending. He had argued that he was driving normally. She had pointed out that he was doing 32 miles per hour on a 45 zone and called it Exhibit A. He had been driving 32 miles per hour. He looked down at Sophia. "We're here," he said quietly. She woke up with the immediate complete alertness of a child who had spent years in an environment where waking up disoriented was a liability. Her eyes opened, she placed herself, and she straightened, without any of the soft confusion of normal waking. "Your house," she said. "Our house," he said. "For now, and then permanently when the paperwork goes through." She looked at the front door for a moment. He could feel her steadying herself, the way you stand outside a door that means something, and take one extra breath before you open it. Okay, she said, okay. They went inside. He had called ahead while she slept. The housekeeper Rosa had been with the family for 18 years, had loved Isabella with a fierce and complete devotion, and had spent the last 3 months treating Dario's grief with the careful, respectful distance of someone who understood that some things needed to be left alone. When they walked through the door, Rosa was standing in the hallway with an expression that contained about 6 different emotions at once, all of them large, all of them being held firmly in check with visible effort. Her eyes went to Sophia, took in the thin coat, the undone braid, the serious face, the worn backpack. Went to Dario. Back to Sophia. This is Sophia, Dario said. She'll be staying with us. Rosa looked at Sophia for one more second, and then something in her face gave way completely, not to sadness, but to something warmer and more immediate. She crouched down to Sophia's level with the ease of a woman who had done it 10,000 times. Are you hungry? She asked. Sophia blinked. The question had clearly not been what she was bracing for. Yes, actually yes. Good, Rosa said firmly, as if this settled something important. Come with me. Sophia looked back at Dario once, a quick glance, checking, and he nodded. She followed Rosa toward the kitchen without further hesitation, and Dario stood in the hallway alone and listened to Rosa's voice beginning the particular warm cross-examination she had used on Isabella for 2 decades, asking about preferences and allergies, and whether she liked her eggs scrambled or fried, and Sophia answering in her careful, precise way, and the sounds of a kitchen coming alive with purpose. He stood there for a moment longer than he needed to. Then his phone rang. Carver, he answered. We have a problem, Carver said with no preamble. The drive is clean, the evidence is solid, Victor Solon is processed, and he is not going anywhere. That part is done. A pause that had weight in it. But in the course of accessing the drive, we found a secondary file Isabella had encrypted separately. It took my tech people 2 hours to open it. Moretti, she wasn't just documenting Victor. He went very still. What was in the secondary file? Names, 12 of them. People connected to Victor's operation on the receiving end, the people he was selling your information to. Some of them are who you'd expect. Crime figures, foreign nationals, one sitting city councilman who is going to have a terrible afternoon. Carver's voice dropped slightly. 3 of them are federal, my federal. People inside agencies that are going to create an enormous jurisdictional headache and a conflict of interest that I am already managing upward as fast as I can. She documented your own people, Dario said. She documented everyone. She was thorough to a degree that I am going to spend a long time thinking about. Another pause. There's one more name on that list, Moretti. There's a name on that list that belongs to your organization. Not Victor. Someone else. Someone who was feeding Victor information about you, even as Victor was feeding information outward. A secondary source inside your own house. Dario said nothing. His name is on the list with transaction records. 18 months of payments. Carver said the name. It was Russo, the man Dario had been about to call for Category 1. The man who had been Marco's counterpart on the operational side for 11 years. The man who had stood at Isabella's funeral and gripped Dario's shoulder and said she was family to all of us, and Dario had believed it because grief makes you stupid. And now he was learning for the second time in one morning what it costs to trust the wrong people, and how much more it costs when you are the most feared man in the city and it still happens to you. He doesn't know we have him yet, Carver said. No, he doesn't. Dario turned and looked down the hallway toward the kitchen where he could hear Sophia asking Rosa something about whether the eggs were from a real farm, her voice carrying that particular note of genuine curiosity that she brought to everything. I have to make a call. Already. Carver's voice stopped him. Let me handle Russo, legally, cleanly. Isabella put him on that list the same way she put everyone else on it, with full documentation, with transaction records, with everything we need. She already did the work. Let it land the way she designed it to land. He thought about that. He thought about 11 years and a funeral and a hand on his shoulder. He thought about his daughter sitting alone with a laptop doing work that should have had 20 people behind it. Call me when it's done, he said. 2 hours, Carver said. Stay home. The call ended. Dario put the phone in his pocket and walked down the hallway toward the kitchen. Rosa had found Sophia a chair at the counter and was moving through the kitchen with the organized energy of a woman who processed emotion through feeding people, which was Dario had always thought one of the more functional ways to process emotion. Sophia was sitting straight with her elbows on the counter, and they were apparently in the middle of a conversation about chickens. He sat down across from Sophia, and she looked at him. "You got a call," she said. "Yes." "Bad news. Complicated news. It's being handled." She studied his face the way she had been studying his face all morning, that focused, patient reading of him that he was realizing she did, constantly gathering data, updating her understanding. "You look like Isabella looks in the photo from the boat," she said. "The one from her wallet. That exact face. What face is that? Like you're mad about something, but you've decided to be calm about it on purpose." She tilted her head. "She said you did that. She said she could always tell because your left jaw muscle did something." Rosa put a plate in front of Sophia and pointedly did not react to any of this. "There was someone else," Dario said. "Someone else inside my organization who was working with Victor. He's being dealt with." Sophia absorbed this. "How many people knew about you from inside?" "Too many," he said. "Apparently. Isabella knew. That's why she didn't come to you with it right away." He nodded. Sophia picked up her fork and looked at the eggs and then looked at him. "She loved you, and she still just didn't feel like she could come to you," she said plainly. "That's the part that's actually the problem. Not Victor, not Russo. The part where someone who loved you completely still felt like she had to do it alone." Rosa became very interested in the sink. Dario looked at the 7.5-year-old sitting at his kitchen counter, telling him the truth about himself, with her fork halfway to her mouth, completely unintimidated, and thought, "Isabella, you absolute genius. You knew exactly what you were doing." "You're right," he said. Sophia seemed briefly surprised that he agreed without arguing. "Oh, I know I'm right," he said. "I've known it for 3 months. Knowing it and knowing what to do about it are different things." Isabella said the first step is just saying it out loud. Did she? "She said that to me about something else, but I think it works for most things." Sophia ate a bite of eggs. She was right. It usually works. He looked at his hands on the counter. "I spent 40 years building walls so high that the person I loved most felt like she had to go around them. That is the thing I am going to have to live with. There is no fixing it. There is only a—" He stopped. "Doing better," Sophia said. Yes." She set her fork down and looked at him directly. "She left me for you on purpose. She picked you. She looked at everything you were and everything you weren't, and she picked you anyway." Her voice was steady. "She wasn't wrong about people. She was never wrong about people. So either she saw something in you worth picking, or she was wrong for the first time." A pause. "She wasn't wrong." The kitchen was very quiet. "No," Dario said. His voice came out barely anything. "She wasn't." Sophia picked her fork back up and resumed eating with the matter-of-fact efficiency of someone who has made her point and does not need to underscore it. His phone buzzed. "It, Lena Vasquez," he answered. "The emergency custody order was granted 20 minutes ago," Elena said, and there was something in her voice, a satisfaction, clean and complete. "Judge Harmon signed it. Sophia Reeves is in your temporary custody effective immediately. We have the first formal hearing scheduled in 3 weeks. Given the circumstances, given Isabella's existing paperwork, and given that Hartwell's director has already submitted a letter of support, my expectation is that the permanent adoption goes through within 90 days. She paused. "Isabella filed the initial petition 8 months ago. She named you as co-petitioner. She named me. She said she was going to talk to you about it before it progressed. She had a note in the file that said, 'I'm reading it directly. Papa will argue first. He'll say he's too old, the life is too dangerous, he doesn't know how to be soft enough. All of these things are true and none of them are reasons.'" End quote. Elena's voice was dry and warm at once. "She wrote that 8 months ago." Dario closed his eyes for exactly 1 second. "Thank you, Elena." "Thank her," Elena said. "I just held the paperwork." He lowered the phone. Sophia was watching him with her fork suspended. "The custody order went through," he said. She put the fork down. Her hands went flat on the counter. She looked at him with an expression that was completely unguarded for the first time all day. No composure, no steadiness, no careful control. Just a child who had been waiting for something for a very long time, receiving the news that the waiting was over. "It's real," she said. "It's real." She pressed her lips together hard, nodded twice quickly, her eyes filled, and she let them. She did not fight it this time, did not manage it into something smaller and neater. She just let it happen, and it was different from the crying at the grave, different from the quiet tears in the car. This was something releasing, something that had been held under pressure for a long time, finally allowed to move. Rosa at the sink made a sound that was clearly a cough, covering something else entirely, and moved to the far end of the kitchen on an errand that did not exist. Dario reached across the counter and put his hand over Sophia's. She turned hers over immediately and held on tight, both hands around his one, the way she had at the cemetery, except this time it wasn't about survival or trust or letting a stranger lead her somewhere safe. This time it was just this, just the fact of it. Just the two of them at a kitchen counter in the morning, with Rosa badly pretending to look for something in a cabinet and Isabella everywhere in the room without being there at all. "She would have been so happy," Sophia said, her voice uneven. "I know." She talked about this. She talked about sitting in a kitchen like this and having breakfast and it just being normal. She said she wanted normal so much. She said the hardest thing about her life was that nothing was ever just normal. I know that too. He had known it and done very little about it and was going to carry that the rest of his life. But he was also going to do something with the carrying, which was not the same as being crushed by it. "We're going to make it normal. That is the one thing I can promise you that is entirely within my control. Normal breakfasts, normal evenings, normal arguments about homework." Sophia actually laughed. It surprised them both, a short, real laugh wet at the edges from crying completely genuine. "I'm very good at homework." "Then we'll argue about something else." "I'll find something," she said with a certainty that was entirely convincing. 2 hours later, Carver called again. Russo had been taken into custody at a location 3 miles from the house with minimal incident and full documentation. The 12 names from Isabella's secondary file were being processed by a task force that had been quietly assembled over the previous 6 weeks, which was how long Carver had apparently been moving on the threads Isabella's evidence had already put in his hands before she died. He had been waiting carefully legally with the patience of a federal agent who knew that the difference between a good case and a great case was time for the final piece. The flash drive from the backpack had been the final piece. "It's done," Carver said. "All of it. The full operation." He paused. "Moretti, I know what this cost. I want you to know the record reflects that the primary evidence in this case originated with Isabella Moretti acting alone at significant personal risk with full understanding of the danger involved. That is in writing. That is permanent." "That's all I wanted," Dario said. "I know." A brief, uncharacteristic pause from a man who was not given to them. "She would have been a formidable attorney." "She already was," Dario said. He sat for a long time after that call, alone in the room Isabella had used as an office when she visited, which he had not entered in 3 months and had entered today to take the call because it was the quietest room in the house. Her books were still on the shelf. Her handwriting was still on a notepad on the desk, a grocery list, the last thing she had written here, ordinary and permanent and unbearable in the specific way that ordinary things left by people who are gone are unbearable. He looked at the list for a while. Milk, coffee, those crackers from the Italian place, flowers for Sophia. She had been going to bring Sophia flowers. He stood up. He took the notepad off the desk and brought it with him, the way he had brought the photograph close to the chest into his pocket, and he walked back through the house to where Sophia was sitting on the floor of the living room with Rosa, who had apparently produced a deck of cards from somewhere and was teaching her a game that Isabella had also known, had also been taught in the same room by the same woman 20-something years ago. Sophia looked up when he came in. She had been laughing at something Rosa had done, and the laugh was still on her face, warm and unfinished. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Everything okay," he said. He sat down on the couch close enough to watch the card game, far enough not to intrude. "Russo is in custody. It's completely done." She nodded. Then she turned back to the cards and said to Rosa, "Show me that one again, the one where you cheated." "I did not cheat," Rosa said with tremendous dignity. "I simply played better than you expected." That's what cheating is. Dario watched them, Rosa's hands moving, Sophia's head bent over the cards, her braids still mostly undone, her thin coat draped over the back of the chair, the empty backpack on the floor beside her. The room was full of late afternoon light, and the sound of two people arguing amiably about whether something counted as cheating, and it was the most ordinary sound in the world. This was what Isabella had wanted. Not the justice, not the evidence, not the dismantling of Victor Solin's operation. Those were the prerequisites, the things that had to happen first, so that this could happen at all. But this was what she had been building toward. This exact thing. A kitchen, a card game, and an old housekeeper who loved fiercely a difficult man on a couch and a little girl who had waited long enough. Sophia caught him watching and gave him a look that was half exasperated and half something warmer. "You could play," she said. "I don't play cards." "You could learn." "I am 58 years old." "And a half," she said. He looked at her. The smallest corner of his mouth moved. "And a half," he agreed. And she held out the deck. He looked at it for a moment, the gesture, the offer, the absolute matter-of-fact expectation in her face that he would simply say yes and come sit on the floor and be a person who played cards on a Tuesday afternoon, and something in him, some last held thing, let go completely and quietly the way ice lets go in spring, without drama, without announcement, simply because the conditions finally allowed it. He got off the couch and sat on the floor. Rosa dealt him in without a word the way she had dealt Isabella in this same room on hundreds of Tuesday afternoons over 20 years of a life that had been imperfect and complicated and full of walls, and still underneath all of it, full of love, the kind that persists, the kind that builds evidence in the dark and sews flash drives into backpacks and makes voice memos for people who will need them, and bets everything on a difficult man she believed in more than he had ever deserved. Sophia studied her cards with great seriousness. "I should warn you," she said without looking up. "Isabella said I get my card instincts from you." "Isabella said that?" "She said you always know what the other person is holding." Sophia looked up then, and there was something in her eyes, a light specific and irreplaceable, that he had last seen in the eyes of someone he had loved his whole life and lost. "She said it was one of the things she inherited from you that she was actually glad about." He held her gaze for a moment. "She told me a lot of things about you," Sophia said. "Good things, real things, not just the hard parts." Her voice was steady and certain and entirely her own. "She wanted me to know who you actually were, not just the scary part, the whole thing." He thought about a woman who had gone to a children's home twice a week for 2 years, who had read to children and helped with homework and brought food and taught a little girl safety protocols she hoped would never need to be used, who had compiled evidence alone in the dark for 3 months while carrying the knowledge that someone wanted her dead, who had made voice memos and sealed envelopes and hidden drives and built a legal architecture entirely around the idea that the people she loved would still be standing when it was over. He thought about everything she had done and everything she had been and how much she had loved and how she had found room inside all of that to leave notes about the good things she had inherited from him so that a little girl who was going to grow up with him would know where to look for them. He picked up his cards. "Deal," he said, and Isabella Moretti's father and Isabella Moretti's daughter sat on the floor of a house that had been too quiet for 3 months and played cards in the afternoon light. And the walls were still there. They did not disappear. Walls like his never fully disappeared, but there were 2 people on the inside of them now, and the house was loud again, and it was going to stay that way. That was the one thing in all of this that was certain. That was the one thing none of them, not Victor Solin, not time, not grief, not 40 years of walls and wrong choices, and all the next weeks that never came, could take away. Isabella had made sure of it, and it was going to last.